Hello and welcome back to my channel for some more quality disability related content. I am so excited to be interviewing the two that I'm interviewing today. Shane and Hannah, they are so incredible. I love their channel. I love their content. If you haven't checked them out, you really need to. I think you're really going to enjoy the conversation we had. I had different hair in the conversation. I realized I had that conversation with them and totally forgot to film the intro and outro. So this is the second episode in my new series. If you haven't checked out the other one, definitely head over after this video is done. Shane, Hannah, and I had such an interesting, fun conversation. I really loved it. They're amazing. So without further ado, let's jump into it. And don't forget to keep sending name ideas for this new series. Oh my God, we've got Shane and Hannah here. I am really excited to chat with you guys. I've been watching your channel for quite a long time now. And I just think you guys are such a good couple. You're so funny. I love the content you make for so many reasons, but for any of my followers who have never seen your channel before, have no idea who you guys are, can you give like a brief rundown, the history of Shane and Hannah and Squirmy and Grubs?
Yes. And I guess we'll start at the beginning.
Sure.
Do you want to share the history of us?
Yeah, well, Shane and I started dating, I guess, almost 5 years ago now.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
Can't believe that.
A long time. And we started our YouTube channel like 2.5 years ago.
Yes.
And the nicknames Squirmy and Grubs are something that we came up with really early on in our relationship before we started our YouTube channel. Shane began calling me Squirmy because he thinks that I apparently squirm around in bed.
It's not that I think that she does. She is like a gyrating, rotating, non-stop piece of energy all night.
Okay, whatever.
It's a fact.
I don't think so. I'm sleeping very soundly, so that doesn't make sense to me. And I call Shane Grubs because his hands are always really sweaty and like grubby, sticky.
Yeah, just
sweaty.
super embarrassing names.
So endearing,
nice.
so endearing.
Yeah.
But on our YouTube channel, we talk about our interabled relationship. I was born with a disability, a disease called spinal muscular atrophy. I've used a wheelchair my entire life, and Hannah is able-bodied. And so we made videos about our experiences and our travels and issues surrounding disability. So there's the elevator.
Well, I'm really
pitch.
glad we cleared up who's Squirmy and who's Grubs, because literally last night I was having dinner with my boyfriend and I was telling him that I was chatting with you guys and he's like, wait, which one's Squirmy and which one's Grubs? And I was like, I'm pretty sure Hannah's Squirmy, so I'm glad we got this all sorted. Now, I wanted to talk to you guys as a part of my new series because you're in an interabled relationship, and I, prior to dating my current partner, who's also blind, was only in interabled relationships.
Yeah.
I had only dated able-bodied people.
Yeah.
And so I'm very familiar with the circumstance, but I think what kind of differs from your experience to my experience is I can kind of like pass as able-bodied.
Right.
You know, I can yes, I have a service dog with me, but like half people, no, more, take it back. 98% of people think I'm like training the dog, or that it's like, you know, an ESA or a fake service dog. Like nobody ever is like, yeah, you're a disabled woman.
Right.
So I kind of often was able to just like blend as a fully able-bodied couple, whereas obviously with you being in a wheelchair, Shane, people see it immediately. And I know you guys have talked a lot on your channel about that, about like the way society perceives your relationships. I remember even seeing one video not that long ago that like absolutely disgusted me, where people were like genuinely questioning the validity of your love and your relationship and assuming like there must be some more details to this story than what meets the eye, because there's no way like an able-bodied woman like Hannah could love somebody like Shane. And it's just so disgusting, and like, I mean, just hits on so many wrongs of the way society truly views disabled people.
Yeah.
But I want to hear a bit more about that, because to be honest, like being blind and watching you guys, I can't see your disability, Shane. You know, so like I watched you guys, just immediately what I caught on to was your personalities. Like, Shane, you're so funny and you guys have such great chemistry. that to me, I was like, oh, this is an obvious match. Because I'm like not immediately confronted by your disability the way most people would be.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to hear about like how it's affected your relationships, some experiences around that, and like Hannah, like some of your thoughts. Is this your first time dating somebody with a disability? What did you think about entering the relationship?
Yeah. So I guess we should kind of break it down between in-person interactions that we've had, because there have been a lot of very awkward moments when people are confronted with the fact that we are in a relationship, and then also the YouTube stuff, which just gets, terrible. The stuff that people say about us. Do you remember like the first experience with ableism that you had?
Yeah.
You're awakening.
I think the first one that I had that had to do with our relationship was different than like my first, like we tend to say like the first time I heard about or like experienced ableism was on our first date when a woman came up to our table and began to pray over Shane.
Loudly.
Like scream praying. Yeah, and I thought that we had just like come across one very weird person. But I later found out that this happens all the time. But I think the first time that someone was like confronted with the fact that we were in a relationship was when we were on like a little day trip to a place in Pennsylvania called Peddler's Village.
Oh, this is wonderful.
Yeah, it's just like this quaint little shopping area. Some older woman came up to Shane and had read a column he had written in like the local town newspaper.
Yeah.
Very obscure, but she was like, "Are you Shane Burkhaw? Did you write this column? Like, I just read that." And Shane was like, "Yep."
I was like, yes, I did. You've read my column?
The one and only, the one and only.
So she was like, "Oh, I loved reading that. Is this your cousin?" Because Shane, I don't know if it was in the column if you have a cousin, or if it just, she just assumed I was, or maybe she said your sister.
Yeah,
I can't remember who she thought I was. But anyway, Shane said, "No, this is my girlfriend." And the woman, I had been standing like a little bit further away because they were like having this interaction and I wasn't involved. And the woman like came over to me and started to cry and like hugged me and was like, "That is the most amazing thing I have ever heard."
She was like, "This is so beautiful of you."
She was like sobbing. It was horrible.
As if Hannah...
An angel living on earth among us.
Yeah. As if Hannah was like, being held against her will.
Yeah.
And this one was congratulating her for suffering through it.
Yeah, persevering.
I've like 100% had circumstances like that, and my boyfriend has as well, where it's like, because he also only dated able-bodied people before being with me, and so we had both had experiences where pretty much every person who had dated us was like, at least in one way or another, by at least one person in their life, like praised for being with us.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting because, like for example, I was in a 2.5-year relationship with an able-bodied man, and he would get praised all the time, and even after we broke up, he would get praised. It would be like girls would be like, "Oh wow, what a good guy! Like I should date him next.
Oh
like so great!" Like like it was like became like his like godly power that he had like dated somebody. And I'm like, you don't stay with somebody for 2.5 years if they don't also add value to your life.
Yeah.
Like we all have challenges, we all have flaws, we all have things that we can contribute to a relationship.
Yeah.
It's interesting that society just like really idolizes like one person's contribution and completely ignores that other person probably also contributes something of value to that human's life.
It's very little, but I like to think that I contribute just a tiny
little bit.
Just like I'm thinking like maybe 10. We're giving you 10%.
Yeah, I'll take it.
I feel like she pulls 90, you contribute 10, right? That's a valid reason to stay with somebody for 5 years.
And that has nothing to do with my disability.
That's just your personality.
I'm terrible and Anne is amazing.
Okay, I want to hear about the internet because I too know that like, as crazy as it is that some people think there's things that they should actually like come up and say to my face, they will say even crazier things behind the keyboard.
Oh yeah.
So it's like if we're shocked at what they'll say in real life, best believe it gets 100 times worse behind a keyboard.
Yeah, when we began our YouTube channel 2 years ago, 2.5 years ago, we never expected it to become what it is today, and so I mean,
you're killing it. For 2 years, you guys are killing it.
Thank you.
At 2 years, I was at 5,000 subscribers.
So look at you now.
Yeah.
The thought of like people being mean to us didn't even cross our minds. We were like young and innocent and like making these stupid little travel vlogs about like what we were up
for like
to.
our family members essentially, you know. We were like, we're going on a road trip, like look where we went.
And then as we got a bit bigger, we had our eyes opened in a very kind of abrupt and rude way. As you know, like our first big video that did well had hundreds of comments from people being like, why on earth would she ever date something like that? Like, not even referring to me as human. People commented things like, you know, they should just kill him because he's a drain on society. Like, and then
horrible.
the theories, you know.
Yeah, and then there's a lot of theories of like Shane is paying me to be his, I guess now, wife.
Yeah.
You've really.
I've been paying you for 5 years. Yeah.
I recently got a raise from fiance to wife, or that like I.
Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Or that I am using Shane either for like his disability checks, like as if that would have been a thing.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Do people know that those are like non-existent? It's like pennies. It's literal pennies.
No.
Yeah, that's a common one.
But yeah, people often
Raking
say,
in those big checks of a couple $100 a month.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that we get a lot is that Hannah must be like damaged in some way, that she must have something wrong with her to, you know, find love with me.
Yeah.
So we get it a lot.
Nice sampling, couple different theories that we get.
In the beginning, it like pissed us off to no end, and we would like argue with people and like, you know, try to make them see it.
Yeah.
But after 2.5 years of like, you know, a few dozen horrible things that we read a day, if you get over it and you just have to laugh about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I know for me, like, I see those things, and instead of letting it tear me down, I let it fuel my fire.
Exactly.
You know, I'm like, this is why I have to make this content. This is why this content is so important.
Exactly.
And I know you guys recently opened up around sexuality and physicality in your relationship, which I think was super brave of you. And I think you did it in like a really tasteful, tactful way, which I commend you for, because it's not an easy topic to be so vulnerable and like open up to the world about. One thing that struck me that you had mentioned, Hannah, is that like you were like, why do people keep asking us? So you were like, surely on the internet there's something, and you looked it up and you're like, oh, there's nothing.
Yeah.
And I'm a big believer, if you don't see you, you need to be you. You know, like if you don't see it existing, then like you need to take it upon yourself to create it if it's something that you believe is important and of value. And at the end of the day, society needs more education around just the topic of disability in general. And I think, you know, obviously that's why I do what I do. That's why you guys are doing what you do. And I think it's so important. And that's why I want to start this series, because I can only bring my perspective. And that's why we need more and more and more voices adding to the conversation. So I'm so happy that your channel exists. I've really learned a lot, to be honest, and I've grown up with all types of disabilities, and I've continued to learn from your channel. So thank you guys for doing what you do. I love it. I'm curious, Shane, you know, as a disabled woman in dating, there's obviously challenges I have to consider. You know, depending on the statistic, anywhere from like 83% to 90% of disabled women are raped and sexually assaulted, which is like a terrifying statistic to have to live with. I don't know the statistic for disabled male. I'm sure it's higher than able-bodied male. Obviously, there's people who will just outright discount us. You know, the amount of times I've, in my years growing up, would hear like, oh, I would totally date you. You're totally my type. You're like funny. You're smart. You're cute. If only you could see. So there's obviously like challenges and negatives to dating. But I will also say that overall, I have found one of the benefits that I appreciate so much is that my disability allows me to get deeper quicker with my partner. For example, one of the things that I opened up about on my channel, which was very difficult to talk about, was my menstrual cycle and the fact that at this point in my life, I don't have like a very definitive start to my period. So sometimes I can tell when I've started on my own, but sometimes I can't, and I have to ask my partner. And that's like a super vulnerable personal thing, especially when you're new into a relationship. It like automatically breaks a wall that able-bodied women would never break with their partner because there's no reason to, you know? And so at the end of the day, like, I am forced to be more vulnerable with my partner at times. I'm forced to get like deeper faster, and that bond becomes so strong. And that's something that I actually like really, really appreciate about dating as a woman with a disability. So I'm curious, like, and I know I saw one story, a night when perhaps, Shane, you had like a little too much to drink and you got sick. And I love that story. It's so funny. And it like, that's what it reminds me of. It's like that moment when like you were just forced to let a guard down and be vulnerable.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it actually bonds you. So I want to know, like, from your perspective, what are some of the negatives you've experienced in dating prior to meeting Hannah? And then, like, what are some of the benefits you feel?
In terms of negatives, I think there is a pretty widespread misperception that I could not be a valuable partner because I require some level of care. In 2 previous serious relationships, the parents of my partner told them flat out, well into the relationship, hey, we think this is a bad idea, there's no future, like, for you with Shane because of his care, like, don't get yourself tied down to this, completely discounting the fact that I am a valuable, worthy partner, and that always put a real awkward tension into the relationship, because once someone's parents are saying to them, like, hey, don't date this guy because of his disability, you can't really recover from that.
No.
To contrast that, Hannah's family was so beautifully welcoming, like, from the very beginning. They didn't, like, think twice about the fact that I used the wheelchair. They were like, cool, like, what's he do? And so that was really cool. The closest thing that you mentioned as a benefit, absolutely agree with you. In our earliest texting conversations, I was like, hey, you know, I need some help with stuff, like using the bathroom, and like if we were ever gonna like lay on the couch together and watch a movie, I would need you to lift me. Like, how do you feel about that? Do you remember, like,
yeah, definitely
receiving that?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really remember the text conversations anymore, but I remember the first time I visited, and, like, you know, I had to learn how to lift Shane out of his chair, and that was, like, the first thing that we did when we got home, you know?
Were you nervous?
No, I mean, I was, like, when I was thinking about doing it, you know, the weeks before, but when we were there, you were so good at, like, making me laugh, and it was, like, funny, and no, I wasn't nervous at all. So I think you were a very good, like, you know, teacher, and I think you have that skill because you've taught people.
Right.
You know, you make them comfortable, and you make it into, like, a funny situation.
My life requires that kind of communication.
Yeah.
Early in our relationship, just to, you know, recap the story that you mentioned, Hannah and I were at a friend's house overnight, and we'd been drinking, and around 2 a.m., I woke up having to use the bathroom like an emergency. And it was still in this phase where we're like trying to impress each other, trying to be like, you know, real
You're like pretending you don't even poop. You're like, nobody poops.
Never pooped in my life.
Exactly.
But I woke up and I was like, I am either about to poop in the bed all over the place, or I need to ask Hannah for help. So I woke her up and I was like, hey, no big deal. I'm about to have diarrhea. Can you get me to the bathroom now?
No, but then I tried. The funniest part is I was like, okay. And I start to move and Shane is like, stop, don't move a muscle. He was like, I'm going to throw up if you move even 1 inch. So I just had to lay there like very still. And he was like, okay, I'm fine now.
I was like, all right, carry me. And like she carried me to the bathroom. It was, you know, a little bit embarrassing. After you go through stuff like that together, you feel like you can do anything together.
Yeah.
And I think that closeness is something that we definitely cherish.
Absolutely. I totally agree. Even like the first time that I had to have Adrian, my partner, like assist me with figuring out if I was on my period, it was like the beginning of my period, which is the lightest time. And he's like, oh my God, that's so much blood. And I was like, well, now you understand, babe. This is just the beginning. It gets way worse from here. Now he like understands what I'm truly going through as a woman every month. Like he understands as a person with a uterus how bad it gets. Because he's like, if that's just the start. I
think all relationships should institute that practice. That would be a a good learning
Get
opportunity.
some more empathy from you.
There you go. Life lessons, the things you can learn. I'm curious, Hannah, like, did this relationship, I know you had like seen some of Shane's work, and then like connected with him. Were you like interested in dating him? Had you dated other disabled people? Or like, what did you think about when you, like, was it a friendship that turned into romance? Was it like the first date was just like the first time you met? How did it kind of all go down?
I think when I first saw the documentary about Shane and like read his blog and heard about his nonprofit, and I emailed him,
that night.
That night, yeah, that was very, very weird for me to do. And I like to think that I was like delusional because it was like after midnight, I was done studying for finals. I had been studying for hours. Like that was very strange.
Like out of character for you.
Yeah, at least for me, it was a very strange thing to do. Yeah. Not anything I'd ever done before. But I was like, oh, I think we would get along so well. Like I think he's so funny, and you know, he had just been on a trip to Savannah, and like I was just in Savannah. All these things. So I sent him an email just being like, hi, I love your blog. I saw this video about you. You know, great job on your nonprofit. Like essentially that. It wasn't like I wasn't really continuing anything on. You know, it was sort of like a nice going kind of email. And then you responded, and we started, you know, texting, FaceTiming. I think after Shane and I were FaceTiming, I think it like very quickly became like, uh-oh.
2 days later, we were like, oh no,
yeah, and
this is something.
And he was living in Pennsylvania, and I was living in Minnesota going to college. I was not looking for a relationship with him. You know, I didn't feel like starting a long distance relationship. It was really terrible. Those first 2 years were horrible, long distance. But once we were talking, it was like we didn't really have a choice.
Yeah. It was profound that like we FaceTimed for the first time, I think 2 or 3 days after she emailed me, and from then on, all we wanted to do was be FaceTiming all the time.
Yeah.
Like we rearranged work and school and plans to be able to FaceTime, and I think that's when we realized like, oh, this is something more than a friendship.
I had never dated anyone with a disability before, and I actually hadn't really ever known anyone with at least a physical disability, and so it was like completely new to me, and I learned a lot through our conversations early on.
I feel like the way you describe your relationship and like how you met and how it all sparked up so quick and you just kind of like had this instant like, oh no, this is it, is very similar to what I experienced with my partner. I know in the past I'd always said like I'm totally open to dating other people with disabilities, but I would rather it not also be blindness. Yeah. And now I'm with somebody who's blind, and it was like one of those things where truly nothing else mattered when I met him. Like it was just like, oh, the fact that you're also blind like truly doesn't matter because like all the other parts are just so perfect and so wonderful and like and just so what I'm looking for that we can work through the challenges that us both being blind will present. So I'm curious, Hannah, like did it even cross your mind, or were you just in like this fog of like, oh my god, the butterflies, this is the person, that it like you just were like, whatever it takes, I'm gonna make it work?
Yeah, it was definitely that one. It was definitely just, whatever it takes, we'll make it work, right?
You can go ahead and just praise, how amazing I am.
Shane, you were so wonderful that I just couldn't. No, but seriously, I didn't, in the beginning, I didn't even consider, like, this might not be a great idea, either, for Shane's disability or just the fact that we were, like, 2,000 miles or 1,000 miles apart. And it was going to be like, when am I going to get to meet him in person? Or how often are we going to get to see each other? There were a lot of things that could have been, what is that phrase? That could have been
deal breakers.
Deal breakers, that's the phrase. There were a lot of things that could have been deal breakers, and they just never came to mind because we were so excited.
And we eased into like the caregiving aspects. I was worried that I would overwhelm Hannah by being like, here's 100 things that you should learn how to help me with.
Yeah.
So we made it fun. I tried to I made a bingo sheet of like my caregiving items.
I was literally gonna ask if you made a wheel to spin the wheel. Spin the caregiving wheel.
We still have it somewhere.
We do.
And I told her like there will be a big surprise if you complete the bingo sheet.
I know. What was my surprise? I don't remember.
Probably like candy.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, was the big surprise the engagement ring or?
But yeah, I mean, from my perspective, Hannah's always been super open-minded. She's never shown like hesitance around any of my caregiving activities, even the more involved ones like showering or helping me use the bathroom. So.
Yeah, and we talked for 3 months before we met in person, so we were already extremely close emotionally before we ever began, Shane teaching me caregiving things, so that helped too.
Yeah.
And you guys work together full time now, right? You guys kind of just work on the speaking that you do and the YouTube channel. That's both of your full-time job?
Mm-hmm.
Yep, YouTube, we're ready to book together right now. And then speaking engagements are like our top 3 films that we do together.
You better make an audio version of the book.
We will.
Yeah.
There will be an audio version.
Obviously, you guys are moving forward with your life. You're married. I know you've touched on the topic of babies a little bit on your channel. What's kind of the thought around that? Because obviously a lot of people... there's going to be people who look at your relationship and think, well, what could... Just like we say, there's so many people who look at it and, what could he contribute as a partner, right? There's going to be people who are going to be like, well, what could he contribute as a dad? If he can't, run and play soccer with his kid. That's the most important part of being a dad. And I want to be clear. I want to ask these kind of questions. And we did discuss ahead of time. I asked them if there was anything they did or did not want to cover. So... I want to ask these questions because I know that there's going to be ignorant people who watch this. And I want to give you guys an opportunity to address it head on. Because this, I wanted to have this conversation around everything that is involved in being in an interabled relationship, which of course, at the point of marriage, for a lot of couples does include kids. So have you guys thought about the plans around that?
Yeah, and we have gotten a ton of messages from ignorant people who are telling us not to have children because I could never be a good father, blah, blah, blah. Just complete ignorance.
We also get a lot of people who message me, at least, saying, or even asking why I'm not with someone who would give me kids or, have kids with me. I think a lot of people assume that we won't have kids or that Shane can't. Shane is getting a robotic arm installed on his wheelchair in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
And so
this is everything.
I know. So he's been thinking of all the things he's going to be able to do, specifically with a kid. You were thinking, oh, I can feed a baby.
I was going to say feeding would probably be way easier.
Yeah, exactly. So
it's definitely going to give me a lot of function that I don't have now, and it's been fun to imagine how I'll be able to apply that to when we have kids.
Yeah. The reality is the most important part of being a parent is the emotional support that you give a child, the values that you instill in them, the morals, the education you provide, all of those things, the love, that's what's truly important. And the reality is, as disabled people, there are so many ways nowadays to accommodate ourselves. And I think people like to assume how we're going to do things instead of just letting us be like, hey, I actually live this life every day and I've thought it through and this is how I'm going to accommodate my own disability. Thank you.
Exactly.
And it's different for every single one of us. We all decide something that's going to work for us. And my boyfriend and I both being blind and we both work pretty intense hours. For us, we're at the end of the day, whether we were sighted or not, it would probably be easier for us just because of the intensity of both of our jobs to get a meal delivery service. And so it's there's so many options nowadays of hey, we can hire people to X, Y, Z. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I know a blind couple, they're both fully blind and they have 2 kids and they own a car and they hire a driver. There's so many ways to accommodate disability. And to hire out or to source outwardly things that can be done that aren't actually integral to living your best life. So I have straight up no concerns about you guys being parents.
and we've talked about maybe for the early months we'll have Hannah's mom come live with us to help share some of the stuff that needs to get done.
Which I think she would do regardless of whether or not you have a disability.
That's the reality. I know so many people who the moment they have a baby, their mom is there for the first 3 months, doesn't want to miss a moment, can't wait to mentor their daughter now, or
Yeah.
I earlier in this video we touched on kind of the fact that you guys have opened up a little bit more about the physicality of your relationship and that dynamic. And obviously, that plays the role in the baby making process as well. So in that vein, I'm curious, Shane, if you've ever faced like disability fetishism when you were dealing with dating prior to meeting Hannah.
I have not. The first experience that I had with that was when we started our YouTube channel. We got all these comments saying, oh, she just has a fetish. Like, it's just a fetish. And I knew that that wasn't the case, but it was scary how many people were like, well, she just has a fetish, or she's a, what's the word?
Devotee.
Devotee, yeah. So, no, I had not experienced it prior to that. People definitely let us know that that was their diagnosis for Hannah.
That was the looming problem that led her to meeting you.
They were like, oh, we figured it out.
Yeah.
So obviously, like, we've touched on so many dynamics of being in an interable relationship, and I just kind of want to give you guys a chance to just put out on the table, like, anything you want people to know about your relationship or about interable dating in general.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a big one.
I know. Feel free to hit on as many points as you want.
I would say, if you are a disabled person watching this, and you've been led to believe that you might not be a valuable partner, that's not true. Hannah and I have been fortunate enough to meet hundreds of interabled couples over the past few years, and all of the disabled people that we've met are amazing partners. Their disability does not inhibit them from being valuable partners in a relationship. So remember that. I know it can get hard when so much of society tells you otherwise, but remember that that's society's issue, not your issue. So yeah, I think that would be one message. Hannah, do you have any other?
I mean, I think something that people ask us a lot is like where we draw the line between caregiving and being in a relationship. And we always tell people that, like, we don't have a line.
There's no line.
Yeah, there's no line. Like, how could we possibly maintain a line?
Yeah.
You know, when I'm helping Shane get dressed in the morning, like, we're talking about what we're going to do that day and, like, what the plans are, what our schedule is. Like, it's all just very seamlessly integrated into our day.
Or not to be, like, weird, but, like, when we're being intimate, like, there are times when I'm like, hey, can you adjust my arm?
Yeah.
You know, like that, there's no line there, you know? So, yeah, it's very seamless.
You know, I think people also forget that even if both partners are able-bodied, the thing when you are in, like, a serious committed relationship and you're in love is you caregive. You are there to care for the other person. That is literally, like, part of our role as a partner is to just, like, cook them soup if they feel sick and, you know, like, do the laundry if they're too busy that day. Like, that is our job as partners in a way, is to caregive for our other person emotionally, physically, spiritually, mentally. We are there to support them in whatever aspect they need to be supported. So it, like, makes total sense to me that there's no line. Like, why would there be a line? You are with Shane because you love him unconditionally, and so you're going to be there to be the partner he needs you to be.
Exactly.
And I think just overall, like, so much of the ignorance that we experience online and in the world is because people don't take the time to really try to understand our relationship. They watch one video, they make all these assumptions, and then boom, they're done. They think they figured it out. So I would encourage you, if you experience or if you come across something that you are not used to seeing, like an interable relationship, spend some time learning about it and understanding and listening to people before you make your assumptions about it.
Yeah.
I think one of the most beautiful parts of our relationship for me was Hannah helping me see myself as valuable. Because of the messaging that I get from society my whole life, and because of, you know, those experiences in previous relationships, I didn't always have stellar self-confidence.
No.
And, like, that was probably pretty apparent early in our relationship when I would, like, apologize about having to ask for help with, like, you know, just normal everyday things. But Hannah, you know, over the years has really reinforced in a beautiful way that I do deserve love, and that my disability shouldn't define, what I'm worth as a partner. And so, I've come a long way in the 5 years that we've been together, thanks to Hannah. So.
See, that's a nicer note to end on. That is the perfect note to end on. Thank you guys so much for sitting down and chatting with me on this channel. I hope that one day we can meet in person. Honestly, I feel like we should have we should set up like a Friday or Saturday night like Zoom wine date, double date or something.
We should.
Because
let's do double date.
I think it'd be so fun. It's so important to have YouTube friends. It's so important to have fellow advocates that are working to break stereotypes, and it's just important to have couple friends. And we don't have that many couple friends, so I feel like this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
I love it. We can get together and talk about ableism.
So exciting! We always joke that like once Adrian came into my life, my guide dog Gallop is like, now I have 2 blind people to take care of. So we were joking, it'll be like you and Gallop, Hannah. You guys will be like wrangling the 3 of us, You and Gallop are in it together. All right, this was so much fun. If you guys want to check out Shane and Hannah, I highly recommend it. They have so much great content. I will link all their socials down below in the description box. And hopefully we can do this again in the future.
Yes, thank you, Molly. Have a good night.
Bye. Shout out once again to Shane and Hannah for doing this video with me, and we will be planning a virtual Zoom double date very soon. Don't forget to go check them out on social to learn more about their story. And if you want to check out episode 1 of this series, my interview with Lolo, a Black woman in a wheelchair, you can click up here. And if you want something with my boyfriend, you can click up here.